And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Ray Shasho Show, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Each week, Ray spotlights in-depth interviews with legendary and up-and-coming authors and music artists. Ray also features the movers and the shakers of the music and publishing industries and suggests important methods for getting the most out of your public relations and marketing needs. Please welcome music journalist, author, and entrepreneur, Ray Shasho.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Ray Shasho, broadcasting from BBS Radio 1. And welcome to the show where we spotlight legendary and up-and-coming music artists and authors. Brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call us today at 941-877-1552 or visit www.publicityworksagency.com. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. Henry Paul is an American Southern rock and country singer, songwriter, who was an original recording member of Southern rock band The Outlaws, then left to form the Henry Paul Band, who is now back with The Outlaws and also was the lead singer for the very popular country band BlackHawk. For The Outlaws, it's always about the music, especially live music. For more than 40 years, the Southern rock legends have celebrated triumphs, endured tragedies, and survived legal nightmares to remain one of the most influential and best-loved bands of the genre. It's a band of brothers bound together by history, harmony, and the road. It's about a group that respects its own legacy while refusing to be defined by its past. But most of all, it's about playing live, playing for their audience. The sextet proves just how well this combination works with Legacy Live, their brand new double live CD, which was released on November 18th. I want people to hear this album and see our show and realize that the Outlaws are still there, says founding member and frontman Henry Paul. Our goal is to unite the fans and bring the group back into the limelight. Legacy Live consists of 2 CDs, full to the brim with classics, such as There Goes Another Love Song, Ghost Riders, Green Grass and High Tides Forever, and Freeborn Man, as well as more recent material like It's About Pride, Hidden Out in Tennessee, and So Long, a total of 20 songs, every one of which proves the gritty Southern rock by the Outlaws marked 2016 and 2017 as intense and passionate as it's always been. The Outlaws' current lineup is Henry Paul on guitars and vocals, Monty Yoho drums, Chris Anderson lead guitar, vocals, Randy Threet bass vocals, Dave Robbins on keyboards and vocals, and Steve Grisham on lead guitar and vocals. The Outlaws will be here in Florida on December 16th at the Capitol Theater in Clearwater, on December 17th at the Plaza Live in Orlando, and February 9th, 2017 at Germain Arena in Estero, Florida, or what I say, Fort Myers. And that show will be with Leonard Skinner and the Blackfoot. BlackHawk will have some dates coming up also in Florida. I'll mention those later in the program. It's my great pleasure to welcome singer, guitarist, songwriter for the legendary Outlaws, Henry Paul, to the Ray Shasho Show. Hello, Henry.
Ray, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Where are you calling from today?
Believe it or not, I'm finally home.
You're home. Now, where is home?
Home for me these days is just outside Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah, I moved down to the Atlanta area about 3 years ago from Nashville, where I had been hanging my hat for about 20 years. But
right.
We are out in the boondocks down here in the great state of Georgia, and I don't mind telling you, it's not a bad place to live.
Yeah, well, I believe the weather's pretty good out there. Now, what made you decide to move to Atlanta?
I'm married to a woman that wanted to come here.
Oh, okay. So you had no choice in the matter.
Well, you know, she's her career is just going great, and
right.
And the move for her was, you know, very important, not only to her but to me and our family. And so if I get, you know, on the road to Nashville, I got about a 3.5-hour commute,
Right.
And it's not too bad. I mean, it has really been a good experience for us. The 3.5-hour commute, is really not that long a drive for one or for two. I find a lot of good use of that time on the phone, and God, it's just a minute to have to myself, which is rare.
It's amazing how Nashville has become the mecca of music, period. Not just country music, but everything. All the players are down there. Yeah.
Well, it's the music scene there has not been synthesized. It's still a very, put an instrument in somebody's hand and let them go about the business of playing it kind of an environment. And
right.
It's one of the last really strong, real music sort of hubs. People come because there's so many talented engineers, session players, publishers, and Nashville is an enormous improvement over living in L.A. or New York.
Oh, yeah. I love Nashville. I have a wife that I was married, actually got married in Henderson, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And we used to go to Nashville all the time, especially when Operaland was there, before it got flooded out, I guess.
Right. Yeah, well, there was that. But, it's a really cool musical community. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it really spans all styles of music, pop, rock,
yep.
country, Americana especially. So, I do miss it. There was a great deal of resources right there at the back door, but being down here is not bad. I've got my studio set up in the basement, my rehearsal
awesome.
Studios down there, and I just stay as busy as I was before.
Well, you're famous not only in the world, but especially in the Tampa area, since you kind of grew up there. I know you were born in New York, mm-hmm. but you grew up in the Tampa, Florida area. You left Tampa to go to, I guess, Greenwich Village to see that scene. And that was a very popular scene, for guys like Dylan. And
right.
I've interviewed a lot of artists that, Maria Muldaur and people like that. And then you came back.
Right.
to Tampa. It was actually a great music scene at one time, and there's, I was good friends with, I don't know, did you know Joe Lala from Blues Image?
Oh, of course I know Joe, or
yeah.
knew Joe, and he and I were best of friends. I was very, very, saddened by his early exit. It was very, very sad.
He's a great guy. I spent some time with Joe. And then, what I found out recently, not only that was there a lot of Southern rockers from Florida, the Leonard Skinners and, the list goes on, but
right.
I found out there was a band called Coco, and Hulk Hogan was the bass player.
Yeah, I know. It's, Tampa in the late 60s, there were bands like Noah's Ark and the Tropics. There was bands like the Royal Guardsmen that had hits from Ocala.
Yep.
And then the second wave of popular bands basically spawned the Allman Brothers, a little bit later Leonard Skinner, a little bit later the Outlaws, a little bit later than that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
That's right.
Some of the members of the Eagles, Bernie Leadon and what's the other guitar player's name, are from, Gainesville. Mm-hmm. So it was, the local music or regional music scene was so strong. There was a coffee house over in Pinellas Park mm-hmm. that was a great venue. It's where I got my start and used to hang out, and people like Eric Von Schmidt, Jim Morrison,
wow.
Just a number of great singer-songwriters got their start there. So the Tampa Bay area and Florida in general had an enormously strong music scene back in the late 60s, and it just snowballed as we grew up. It turned into a career for a lot of people.
I know the Allman Brothers hung out a lot over here near the beach in Bradenton a while back. Did you know about that scene when they were here?
Yeah, it was. Well, Greg and Dwayne grew up over in Daytona,
right?
And they had local regional bands in Florida, and they were always really, really first rate. I mean, really good ones. And well, they went to L.A. and cut a record in a band called Hourglass, and eventually wound up meeting Phil Walden and getting a deal with Capricorn and putting the group that became the Allman Brothers together. But they're all Jacksonville, Daytona Beach guys, and I think when they wanted out of Macon, they wanted to leave that particular environment, they came back to where they started from in Sarasota and Dickey, you know, a little bit more out towards Ellington.
Right.
But why not, you know, come back to Florida? Hell, I mean, Sarasota is a whole lot more interesting and fun than Macon, Georgia.
Yeah, it sure is. I've been to Macon too. Dickey's still here. You know, he's in Sarasota. I've seen a lot of his. He does a lot of charity events, but you know, he keeps kind of quiet.
Yeah, he's a man that has definitely done his part and made significant contributions to the cause musically, and I can see why he would want to take a little bit of a step back and enjoy his life out in the country, hunting and fishing, and you know, just living your life without the constant pressure of schedules and performances and delivery dates and blah blah. It's just I'm still in that business, but I can see a day when I might want out. I don't know exactly when, but I can understand why he's doing what he's doing. It's a very beautiful place to live. And
his son's a great guitar player as well. You know, they were both. They were both in Great Southern together. I haven't seen any dates from Great Southern. They were touring a lot at one time.
Yeah, the family talent deal is. Little Henry comes out and plays with the Henry Paul Band and the Outlaws, and you know, that new generation of family members stepping up and taking the reins, so to speak. I foresee that for my son, and certainly for Dickey's. It's very exciting, and I know it must be rewarding for him to see his son, you know, exhibit that kind of talent.
You must have known Dan Toller.
I did very well.
Everybody did. He was a very popular guy around here.
His brother as well, Frank. You know, they were both very sweet guys, and their version of the Allman Brothers I thought was exceptional with Mike Lawler and Dickie and Greg and Butch and J-Mo. But, you know, I don't know how this works, but I guess we're all on the clock, and sometimes the departure date varies, and for Danny and Frank, it was a very sad sort of...
Very sad,
a very sad sort of deal.
Yeah. Well, you, Jim Fish, formed the country rock band Sienna, and that's where it began, I guess, with Monty Ojo and Frank O'Keefe, right? We're all always on that band as well. When did you meet Huey? When did that?
Huey was in New York the same time I was.
Right.
I was living downtown playing clubs, and he was playing lead guitar for a recording artist, a singer-songwriter from the Bay Area whose name was Milton Carroll. And Milton was a very talented singer and songwriter, and Huey was up there working with Milton and got homesick, and Milton's career kind of stalled, and I guess when it became apparent he wasn't going to take Cat Stevens' place in the scheme of things, Huey came home, and of course Frank and Monty and I were playing together in a band, and Huey had played with Frank and Monty, so Huey joined our group, and eventually Billy came back from Colorado about 8 months or a year later and joined the band, and at that point the original lineup of the Outlaws that went on to record those great records was in place, and we started working our way out of Tampa and trying to put it out there on the road.
Yeah, another guy that left us too soon, Huey. I mean, you know, they say he passed away in his sleep. Was he having any health issues or anything?
Well, I don't know. His son just passed away at a very early age.
Oh, my gosh, you're kidding me.
So I think that heart problems perhaps were part of the landscape.
Yeah.
You know, Huey's early departure, Billy Jones's and Frank O'Keefe's early departure was all very, very sad, and
Yep.
and honestly, no one in their right mind could have ever seen any of that coming.
I know.
Especially Huey. He was such a survivor and such a a pretty level-headed guy, and but I have to believe that somewhere in there was some issues with his heart, and it was sad. It was a shocker. I mean, Monty called me at 2 a.m. and told me that Huey had passed away about 3 hours earlier, and I mean, I just could not believe it, because if you knew Huey, you know that he was really good at pushing back and really knowing where the line was, and really, a smart guy. And it was such a shocker. It was kind of like, I don't know about you, but Glenn Fry passing.
Yeah, I know.
I could not believe that.
Yeah.
And so it happens, and it's a sad part of the business of living.
Yeah, like the Righteous Brothers said, there's a hell of a band up there in heaven. There's better music up in heaven than there is here. You were, you guys were you had a lot going for you in the beginning. Let's say you were the first band signed to Arista Records, and Clive Davis kind of helped you guys out. You were kind of recommended, I guess, to Alan Walden by Ronnie Van Sant. Isn't that right? He kind of boasted about you guys?
We had played a show with Leonard Skinner in Nashville.
Right.
At a little club there called Mother's Music Emporium, and Ronnie was at the venue when we were on stage playing, and he saw the Outlaws play Green Grass and High Tides at the end of the set, and he called his manager up the next day and said he found a great band, and they got themselves a Freebird. And, of course, Alan came out and saw the band and formed a partnership with our then manager, and because of his influence, being the manager of a successful band like Leonard Skinner and all the other things he had done prior to that, we had a representative that had a conduit to the upper reaches of the musical community, and it made the difference between the Outlaws getting a deal and getting on with their career. It was a big difference maker.
If people don't know who Alan Walden is, he was huge. I mean, him, Otis Redding, and his brother created, Redwall Music, which was a publishing company that housed songs like When a Man Loves a Woman, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, and Soul Man.
Right.
And
those guys were smart guys, and
and his brother founded Capricorn. Yep.
Yeah, his brother formed Capricorn, and they were just really somehow in high school and college they got mixed up in the music business, and boy, they didn't mess around. They really took it to the house, and we all owe Phil and Alan Walden a debt of gratitude from the standpoint of their orchestrating so many great careers. Marshall Tucker, Wet Willie, the Allman Brothers, the Outlaws, Leonard Skinner. I mean, come on.
Say no more.
I mean, and that's just the hillbilly, guitar boys from my generation. If you look at, the black R&B music scene that they were involved in, I mean, it was huge.
Well, he also signed Boz Scaggs.
Oh, yeah. Boz moved to Macon and made a few records for Phil, and we met Boz back then, and he had a guy from Lakeland playing guitar with him, Les Dudak.
Oh, yeah, I love Les Dudak. I saw him in concert a few times.
Yeah, he was just a sensational musician, and he had the drummer from Toto playing drums for him, and the kid must have been probably 19 or 20 years old at the time, and we opened a show for Boz in Atlanta, and got to see Les, and it was just a great band. We were just absolutely mind blown by their professionalism and their musicianship.
It's funny. Every time I do a bunch of interviews together, they're always kind of related somehow. You just mentioned Toto. I just recently interviewed Bobby Kimball. I did Ed King of Leonard Skinner. And I just did Ken Hensley yesterday from Uriah Heep and Blackfoot. He was in Blackfoot for a couple of years, so it's kind of weird.
Well, yeah, it is.
You guys, the self-titled debut album from the Outlaws it hit the roof. It was awesome, and I will always remember Green Grass and High Tides. What a freaking song, man! To me, that's in my top 10. That's such a great song.
When you compare it to Freebird, or if you compare it to Stairway to Heaven or Layla,
right?
It does have its own unique qualities and its own unique musical personality, and that was a very magical musical moment, and that's the part of the music business that really intrigues me and keeps people like me coming back is just the enchanted, magical qualities of stumbling onto something uniquely important and you know what I mean, and impactful, and it just keeps you writing songs and keeps you making records and keeps you putting performances out there, because you never know where the next great song is going to come from.
Right. Well, you hit it big with that tune, man. I believe that was released around 75.
Yeah, that record came out in the summer of 75.
Now, I saw some quotes you made about the song. I think you said the song is not about marijuana, but it's about deceased rock and roll luminaries. Is that true?
Yeah. I think when you look at the song, and you think about the Rolling Stones' greatest hits, which was High Tides and Green Grass, I think it was that turned around, and it was written, for Brian and for Janice and for Jim and Jimmy. And the line, when kings and queens bow and play for you, it's really a tribute to the enormously talented performers that came before us.
I love the song. I think everybody else, when you think of the Outlaws, it might be your signature tune. I know There Goes Another Love Song was a big, top 40 hit as well. And
the Outlaws, unlike the Eagles, were never really a top 40 band. We sort of made our name for ourselves on the stage, playing shows.
Right.
And we became more of in the long run, more of a cult band where we have an enormous fan base, but it's not in the same, it's not steeped in the top 40 musical format. It's more of the album-oriented rock format, and I don't know, it makes the Outlaws a little less accessible and a little more interesting and mysterious.
Sure.
The people that are fans of the Outlaws, they're absolutely fanatical about the band, and they feel, I think, to a degree like they have ownership in the group, because it is a little bit more of an obscure brand, and they love it so, and they turn people on to it, and, they shout our praises. It's really a sort of a family issue with our fans, and it's really a uniquely, rewarding kind of a relationship.
Yeah, if anybody goes on YouTube and punches in the Outlaws live, you're going to see, just look at the crowd. And the crowd is jumping up and down for, most of the show. Like you said, they're your, die-hard Outlaws fans. And it is like, it's like you said, like a kind of a cult thing.
Yeah, they're and the Outlaws were, nothing really more than just a bunch of local musicians in Tampa playing clubs. And so when the Outlaws broke out and started to have national success, the fact that we were from Tampa was a very unique point of pride. And I think that, we maintain a very loyal following at home, because although we moved to Nashville later in our careers because of, obligations to another brand, I know that we still call Tampa home for the Outlaws, the Henry Paul band, and I we have a very, very, very deep connection with that audience and that place on earth.
Do you have any camaraderie between other Southern rock bands at the time, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was part of the experience of being involved in that was touring with Leonard Skinner and forming friendships with members of the group and touring with Marshall Tucker and
that was a great band.
And Charlie Daniels. I mean, those three bands were sort of, they adopted us or took us in and nurtured us and were good to us or very kind to us and generous. The Allman Brothers, who were sort of in another, they dwelled somewhere a little bit above where we were, and I think we worked for their acceptance and respect, and we got it. You know, there was a moment where they acknowledged our effort, and we got to be sort of in their club a little, and that was, the Allman Brothers really set the tone for that with their road crew and their tattoos and the camaraderie. And the Brothers and Sister album was just huge to us from the standpoint of camaraderie and communal quality. And we had a very, very tight and close friendship with Charlie Daniels, Marshall Tucker, and Leonard Skinner. It was just a very unique time and a beautiful thing.
I was fortunate. I actually worked at the Capitol Center Arena in Maryland back in, I think it was 75. And I got to, meet Skinner back in 75. And it was just me and two other guys, and they were rehearsing Saturday night. You know what song I'm talking about.
Who was rehearsing what? I'm sorry?
Leonard Skinner was rehearsing.
Oh, Saturday Night Special.
Saturday Night Special. They just introduced the song.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't get better than that. 3 guys that worked there at the Cap Center, and us hanging out with the crew and Leonard Skinner, watching them rehearse. I mean, it was.
It's funny because when we were touring with them, they would have a sound check earlier in the afternoon.
Right, it was earlier in the afternoon, exactly, yeah.
And they'd come in around 2 or 3, and Ronnie would always stay at the hotel. The band would come in. They would run the arrangements down without a singer.
Exactly.
And everything went down every night, every single day, exactly like the day before. And we really learned a lot about their professionalism, like how much attention they paid to the detail of their performance and how snug and tight their performance was. And we were just, and it all went down live without the singer, and so it was just the band running through the musical arrangement of the song. It was really crazy cool, and I don't know, we learned a lot from them. I did.
Yeah, Ronnie was a very professional, guy, and I was fortunate to actually bump into him backstage. Literally, I bumped into him as I was leaving. We left, and then we came back that night for the show. And, it was, what an experience that was. Yeah,
that is a great one. I mean, we have, like, I went to the Shea Stadium and saw the Beatles perform.
Oh, wow, you're kidding me.
There's these moments in our life where we are in the right place at the right time. I remember I had a job one night at a Jimi Hendrix show as an usher at Curtis Hickson Hall.
Yep.
And part of the gig was you wore a burgundy blazer and you got everybody to your seat, and once the show started, you could take your jacket off, hang it up in the coat room, and go out and watch a show. And I went up to the front of the stage and was standing directly in front of Hendrix, while he lit his guitar on fire. And it was during the Are You Experienced tour. It was just phenomenal. And, every now and then you get lucky like you did in Laurel, or where is the Cap Center? Is it?
Landover? It was in
Landover, that's what
Landover,
I meant.
Maryland, yeah.
So that's a good story. That's probably a undoubtedly a lifelong memory for you.
Oh, it is, and then, of course, it was, I guess almost the original band. I don't know if it was the original drummer or not.
Right.
I think Ed King wasn't there. I talked to him about it. He says he didn't think he was at that show. He wrote the song. He was a co-writer of the song, but I don't think he was there at the time.
Those guys went through some personnel issues. Every band really does.
Every band does, yeah.
And but they always had they never weren't great. They were always great. And of course, it was while we were very close and tightly, connected as friends, we were also very, very competitive.
Sure.
And the Outlaws would go out every night, and their job was to, kick the headliner's ass. So we went out there every night and really got after it and tried to make our part of the program, memorable. And but that competition was always tempered with a great camaraderie.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, you got to write. You haven't written an autobiography yet, have you?
I haven't. There's been a couple.
You need to.
Offers, to sit down and write a book, and and if I was to do that, I just am saying that to me it would be like as a witness to something bigger than obviously my career or the Outlaws' part in it. It would be more as a witness to a musical phenomena that all these bands from Nashville and Jacksonville and Macon and Tampa would, and Spartanburg, they would just rise up and create this genre of music that came to be known later as Southern rock. It was quite a moment, and I know there's a lot of interest from fans about what was it like and how was he and what did you do and where'd you go and what'd you smoke?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it would probably be like that, I think.
Undoubtedly, though, the 70s, the 60s were great, music-wise. Probably the best time for music on the radio was the 60s. But the 70s was, the big year, the big decade for concerts, and it was such a great time. It was,
yeah. And I think you're right. The 60s, especially from say 67 to, or maybe 65 to the end of the decade,
right,
were really impressionable. Before 65, I don't know. The Beatles came out in 63, and they had a lot of top 40 hits, and it was very exciting. But when they got around to like Rubber Soul and Revolver and and I don't know, the Dave Clark 5 had a string of hits in the earlier 60s, but man, after 65, Bob Dylan came out with Bringing It All Back Home, and the Doors popped out of L.A., and it was just exploded into this, Janis Joplin and Big Brother, and wow, it was pretty exciting. Cream and all of the Hendrix thing.
I just hope the kids go back and bring up that music because they have every tool at their exposure now. And it's a shame if they don't. You can just look up anything on your phone today and punch it up. Thank God for YouTube.
Yeah, and my son, who is extremely knowledgeable of music as a historian.
Good.
Has his phone in the front lounge of the bus plugged into our stereo system. And he goes through and plays some of the most incredible stuff. And there is an upside to technology. There is an upside to, even though Spotify doesn't pay royalties fairly to artists, you can sure as hell find anything you want for the most part on it. And we'll listen to the Bobby Fuller 4, and I Fought the Law and the Law Won.
Law Won, yeah. Another tragic story there.
Just everything. There's everything and anything you could ever want, and so.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's a real smart guy and a real.
Now, is he in a band or is he?
Well, he is. He is actually our stage manager and guitar technician, and he comes out and plays with the Outlaws and the Henry Paul Band. He sits in and plays.
Next generation, here we go.
Yeah, one of these days he'll probably take the reins.
Awesome, that's wonderful. I love to see that.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for him, and we want to keep it going.
Henry, you need to go down in history, man, because you accomplished and scored with 3 separate bands. I mean, not too many people can say that.
No. Well, it's unusual in a very real sense, but excuse me. Really what it came down to in every one of those groups, aside from the obvious talented people involved,
right,
was having a vision, doing the work, and being, showing up every day and putting yourself emotionally into everything you did. And most of it was being able to see it, being able to look up the road and actually see what it was going to be and hear what it was going to be. And BlackHawk was an enormous moment.
They were
for
huge.
Me, much later in my career.
Yeah.
So,
but also the Henry Paul band was huge as well. And I saw an interview you did with Dick Clark, which was pretty cool.
Well, and it was really big. And that first record that really captured the spirit of that group is, to this day, one of the classic great records. And honestly, I mean, from the standpoint of why we do what we do, it's an extreme point of pride for me. And all the original members of that group are alive and very, very musically engaged. And when we put the Henry Paul Band on stage this month in Clearwater and in Orlando, people are going to see the guys that made that record sing and play as good or better than they ever have. And I'm telling you, that in and of itself is such a uniquely unusual circumstance, and I'm so excited about it.
Do you still talk with Billy Crane?
Oh, all the time. He and I are great writing partners. We wrote the lion's share of the most recent Outlaws studio record, and we're going to write the lion's share of the new one coming out here in the next year or 18 months.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, man.
Work.
Work, yeah.
You gotta stay on it.
Well, the Henry Paul Band, you dedicated some songs to Ronnie Van Sant, right? So Long and Grey Ghost.
Right. Big song for us, and I mean, I knew when we were writing it that it was well written lyrically, and that it had a musical personality that would resonate with our fans. But over the years, it has grown in its, with the early passing of Ronnie Van Sant and the tragedy that beset that band, it even pushed the song into bigger, because there has been a resurgence of interest and popularity for Leonard Skinner and the Outlaws and bands like that. So I don't know. It's just you hang around a while, you can see a song, go through its early stages of life and have a second life, decades down the road, which it is right now, and I'm very happy to see that.
You reunited with Huey, I think, back in '83, and then you released Soldiers of Fortune.
Well, we did Soldiers of Fortune in the middle of the '80s, and by then the party was over, and it was MTV and Flock of Seagulls, and the Outlaws just, despite our effort to try and fit in, we just couldn't find any interest in what we were doing, with the exception of our core audience. So we had a lot of fun from '83 to '89. For me, it was a lot of fun. We toured in very modest sort of style, a very modest sort of style, and we had so much fun playing smaller clubs, and just, I don't know, it was one of the most fun times of my life in the Outlaws was in the late '80s, and I left the band to go to Nashville and start again. I wanted to take one more chance or shot at putting a new career together, and I got lucky, and BlackHawk was the result of it. But the 2005 reunion with Monty and Huey and Dave Dix was really a bittersweet sort of moment for me, on not knowing that Huey was, going to pass away so soon, and obviously without Frank and Billy there, it was a little on the hard side, but I'm very glad we did that.
Did you know that BlackHawk was going to be so successful? I guess that band started around 91.
Right. It did. Well, we started writing together, and I had no idea. Let me tell you, like Clive Davis, the music business is very secular, and you're hot and then you're cold. And when you're cold, you're off the label, people don't return your phone calls, and you're kind of on your own to make the most that you can make out of the situation or circumstances that you've been given. And between when we were showing the door, so to speak, at Arista in 1980, whatever, 2 or 3, and when I came back with BlackHawk in 93 with a multi-platinum album, Clive Davis suddenly became my friend again. And he and I would reminisce at certain industry functions, and he put his book out a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, I was lucky enough to make the book on a personal note, and the Outlaws were mentioned, and BlackHawk was mentioned, and I was mentioned by name, and I don't know, it made me feel really good that I was able to go back to Arista and have that kind of success, because God knows we didn't expect it. We certainly dreamed of having success, but we didn't know that we were going to sell multi-platinum, status on a record or two, so it was really exciting.
Great band. I think my favorite song is "Goodbye Says It All."
Right.
That's always been one of my favorite tracks. Yeah. And then, tragedy hits again with Van, right? In 1999. Yeah.
Comes up with cancer at the age of 43 or 4, and
my goodness.
He was on the clock there for about 18 months, and he was gone. And anytime you lose an original member to a group like that, the industry, has a way of breaking out the eraser. But we were able to stay in the business that we love with that musical brand to this day.
Which is amazing.
It is doing very, very well out there on the road, and we record new music. And we were able to start a charity in the name of Van Stevenson, and we've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have raised over $250,000 for cancer research in his name. And
bless you, man.
We're just
awesome.
Every day it's the same thing. It's like the movie Groundhog Day. Yeah. Just get up and do it again.
Now, I went to your website. You guys also, there's a few different charities that you got out there.
Yes, the Outlaws here in the last few years have adopted Music Cares as their charity of choice.
Right.
And I started a little benevolent sort of group of guys that were core Outlaw fans, very supportive of the band, and I called the group the Four Horsemen Society after the 4 original members of the group. And the group has grown to about 60 members, and they go out in the name of the Outlaw fans and help raise money for charities. This year we wrote Music Cares a check for $22,000.
Wow.
And so, one of the reasons why it's still fun to do this is because now we get to do things that give us something.
Yeah, very rewarding.
Back.
Exactly.
We can do something for a charity, or we can spend some time with the fans before or after the show, and we can, make it a little bit more human rather than hopping in the limo, buzzing up the window, and hauling ass to the hotel. So it's just very, very. It's a great deal of fun for me and a very rewarding kind of time for me in this, what we do.
Well, BlackHawk, I think you guys produced 5 studio albums. You had the self-titled album, BlackHawk, Strong Enough, Love and Gravity, The Sky's and the Limits, Spirit Dancer. You had compilation albums, Greatest Hits. And then you guys left Arista, right, for Columbia? We did, and... you did another album, Spirit Dancer.
Actually, the Spirit Dancer album was on Columbia, and... Right. And let me just say that the music business, not unlike the band business, is a very political job.
It is, yeah.
And label heads lose their job, and with their demise, in the case of BlackHawk on Sony, went our support. And but we wrote and recorded probably one of the band's best records in Spirit Dancer, dedicated to Van, and great songs, really inside, well-written songs, and I'm very proud of the record. And I'm just really proud of the fact that BlackHawk goes out and still performs at a high level and has a very, very busy performance schedule in the course of a year.
Now it's you, Dave, and now Randy, right? Is also
Randy
in the band?
sings with us.
Yep.
He stepped in and started singing high harmony when Van left the road, and so when Dave and I go out to perform as BlackHawk, Randy comes with us and sings with us and plays. And
cool.
He's a very talented guy.
And let's see, 2014, you released your first studio album in like 20 years called Brothers of the Southland.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It was a kind of one of those relationships with a guy by the name of Tom Lipsky, who has been in the small independent record business for quite a while, and he just wanted to get into country music. He came over to my house here in Georgia. We played a bunch of songs, and we had some music, recorded music in the can, just sitting there waiting to be exploited or put out, and we put together a really good record and sent it out there. It did very well, and we re-recorded some of the greatest hits and put that out there, and it did very well, and it was a big boost to BlackHawk's, profile in the marketplace. It really helped us a lot from the standpoint of visibility.
And the title track was a tribute, right, to Southern rock bands and all those who have passed on.
Exactly, Brothers of the Southland, and it's a damn good song and pretty gritty and Americana for BlackHawk. A little bit of a departure from the sort of hit-driven relationships type songs, but this one was sort of an autobiography from the standpoint of my perspective.
Now, BlackHawk has a few dates here in Florida. Also at the Capitol Theater, which I'm very familiar with. I cover tons of shows there in Ruth Eckerd Hall. I know everybody there. December 16th at Capitol Theater. December 17th at the Plaza Live in Orlando. And I think you're going to be in Granite Falls in February.
Yeah, and I haven't really taken a good look at our schedule. I'm still enjoying the idea of being home for a minute. But, in the course of that evening on the 16th and 17th, BlackHawk will open the show as an acoustic trio.
Oh, really?
The Hall Band will perform the
That's
entire
awesome.
Grey Ghost album, and then the Outlaws will come out, and we'll all join in and play together and do an hour and a half or 2 hours with everybody on stage jamming together. So it's going to be a great show. It's a great show every year.
Yeah, we're so lucky to have the Outlaws, in our own backyard here. That's pretty cool.
Well, and the people that run that venue, they're very supportive, and we've been friends with these guys for a long time. And it was my dream to come home and play a show in a venue that was appropriate for where the band was with their career, and that place is just sensational. And honestly, it's one of the highlights of my year to go home and do a couple nights in Florida with the Outlaws. Yeah,
I think Bobby runs all the the touring.
Yes, and John Valentino, and they've been in our corner for 40 years, and we've all grown up together in this business, and we just know who our friends are, and they really look out for us. I can't thank them enough.
It's funny, I interview so many legendary artists, and they don't have a clue sometimes about Florida venues. Because really, there's not a lot of bands don't want to come this far south for some reason. So they always ask me, what's a good venue? Can you get us in? So I kind of act as the in between, the middleman, and I hook them up with Bobby, and I email him and he says, you want these guys to be there, and blah blah blah, So
well, and the stereotypical personality of a musician is not altogether flattering.
Right.
They're generally, smoking something crazy and clueless as to what the hell's going on, and they get up at 12:31 in the afternoon, and they're up all. I don't know. I don't know who that guy is, but we're not that guy.
You're not that guy.
No.
You know, I interviewed Chris Stein from Blondie. Now, listen to this. Blondie did a benefit in Lakewood Ranch. You know, I live here in Lakewood Ranch, and which is between Sarasota and Bradenton. And it was at like this golf course facility, and they brought in a stage and everything. And it was a very expensive, you know, charity thing. So I went in the bus, and I took my daughter with me, and we went in there and sat with Chris. And he looks at me, and in a low voice, he says, "Now, why are we here? What kind of charity is this? Where are we right now?" I said, "Chris, are you kidding me?" And he wasn't kidding, you know.
No, there's more of that than there isn't, you know. And whatever. I don't know how that works. I'm good at keeping score, and you know, and relationships are everything to me. And you know, I mean, all my friends from high school and early days in the music business, I mean, I value those relationships, you know, that with my kids, you know, everybody.
How many kids do you have? How many children do you have?
I have 3 by my first marriage, and my wife and I just had a little boy about a year and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. He's an adorable little soul, and we may have one more, but, you know, parenthood at this late date in my life certainly keeps me busy. Yeah,
especially if you're on the road, it makes it really tough.
Well, all my kids grew up with me coming and going, and there's a little bit of difficulty in what that represents, but they all knew Daddy loved them, and they all knew Daddy had a job that took him away, and it was always fun to see him come and sad to see him go.
Right. Do you have any grandkids?
I do. My daughter has a little boy and a little girl, and my other daughter has a little boy. So my son is their uncle, and he's 11 years younger.
Oh, wow.
So we have a real convoluted sort of concept family-wise, but it seems to work.
It's funny. Henry, here's a question that I ask everyone that I interview, and I get some really interesting answers and surprising answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
I'm a big Don Henley fan. I think it would be fun to spend a little time with him and write a song like Mike Campbell or, you know, some of the other people he's collaborated with. I'm an extremely big fan of his. Obviously, Bob Dylan, in his moment, was a very magical and enchanting sort of personality to me.
Right.
I've never met Bob Dylan. It would be really fun to meet him. I've been very close to him physically from a proximity standpoint, but never spoke to him. I think that would be interesting. Aside from that, Stephen Stills and I have met many times. I'm a big fan of his, and you know, I think it'd be fun to do something with him musically, just writing and singing and playing. But those are names that kind of come to mind right off the top of my head. You know, those people are you know, engaging as far as I go with regard to their body of work, and it would be interesting to spend a little time with them and get to know them and maybe write a song or do something fun together.
Sure. Yeah, I talked to Joe Lala about Stephen Stills, who actually kind of grew up in Tampa, right?
Yeah, went to Plant High School and
Plant High School,
went to private school up in St. Leo and
did
pretty good, you know. And Joe played with him for years. I mean, Lala was like so big to us as up-and-coming musical personalities from Tampa. And Joe played on a lot of the Outlaw records.
Oh, did he? Huh.
Yeah, he played on the second album, the third album. He played on all the Henry Paul Band records. He played on, I had him come to Nashville and play on the most recent BlackHawk album before he passed away. And he was just, you know,
He's a great guy.
Somebody that ran with a big crowd, and aside from Blues Image, he was somebody that traveled in the high circle of the high and mighty, and we were very enamored by Joe's career and his success, and he was a very genuine and really wonderful, down-to-earth guy as well.
Yeah, he was revered by his peers, which is probably the most important thing. But as far as the general public, a lot of people didn't know all his accomplishments. So I wrote an article. Yeah,
sort of an inside name. You had to really read liner notes to know who he was.
And he was a pretty good actor too.
Yeah, he was. He was a great voiceover artist as well, and he had quite a career in L.A. I mean, he made a uniquely successful transition into an entirely new line of work and did very, very well at it.
Yeah, he was in a Seinfeld episode. Did you know that?
I did, and listen, when I was spending time in Tampa on business, I would stay at Joe's condo. He had an extra bedroom, and I'd fly into Tampa, rent a car, drive over to his condo, put my stuff away. I'd go out, he and I would go out to dinner. I would take Joe out, and for the generosity of putting me up, I'd always treat him to dinner, and we would go out to dinner. And I'd spend 2 or 3 days sometimes at a time in Tampa, and this was probably 2008, 9, 10, in that area. And we just got to be great friends, and he would come to Nashville and play on my records and stay with me in my house in Nashville. And it was funny, I was playing Lakeland with the Outlaws, and I don't even know the date that he died, but he was in the late stages of his fight with cancer.
Yeah.
And one of my Horsemen buddies drove me over to Tampa and waited in the parking lot while I went up and visited with Joe, knowing well that it would be the last time I ever saw him.
Right.
And he passed away literally the day after I saw him.
Yeah.
And it was such a good moment for me, and such a wonderful moment for me to be able to tell Joe that I loved him and that I that I admired him and respected him and had a deep emotional sort of love for him. And it was just a great opportunity. I'm very thankful for being able to have done that.
When I was at his place, he told me you were coming over.
Yeah, well.
It's so funny. You said you were going to spend the night over there. Yeah.
Well, we used to spend a lot of time together, and he wanted so much to go on the road with me and play percussion, and and it was just one of those things that was it was impossible to really pull together because he lived in Tampa and my business was in Nashville, and it was just a logistical impossibility. But the fact that we had that really close relationship the last 3 years of his life means a lot to me.
I was trying to get him to come. I was going to even pick him up in Tampa to see Dickie Betts, because he did some work with Dickie at that charity event, which was in Mayaka. And then I met Corky Lang down in Venice. Corky Lang from Mountain, and they were friends. And at that time, he was sick, and I told him to meet us down in Venice, and he said, he couldn't travel anymore. But I did get Corky and him hooked up on the phone together, so they got to talk.
Right. Well, it's funny because the day before I saw Joe the last time, the day before, Chris Hillman, just to show you what kind of guy that guy is, flew into Tampa, rented a car, drove over to the apartment, spent the day with Joe.
Really?
Chris Hillman. I mean, was such a class thing to do, such a thoughtful thing to do. Flew from L.A. to Tampa and to spend 5 or 6 hours with a guy who was in a band with him and who he had a deep love for. And the next day I came by, and I don't know, man, it was just, Lala had a lot of friends in a lot of high places musically, and he was one of them. And he was enormously impressionable to myself and my peer group. We were just deeply enamored by Lala.
I think the passing of his mom also kind of, I know the feel. I just lost my mom 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So I know the feeling that what
That's
he went
tough.
through.
It's my mother's 89. She'll be 90 this coming March, and she was here at the house. She went back home the day before yesterday, and every Thanksgiving I spend a week or 10 days with my mom and my sister.
Yeah.
Now my sister has to travel with her because she's, got memory issues, and she could get kind of turned around in connecting flights. But I'm thankful for my mom. I lost my dad a few years ago. I know that, my mom's time is probably not that far down the road, and she's not going anywhere right away. But I'm just really thankful that she's still with me and with us, and she's just a riot. She's a riot. She loves to come to my house and drink wine and eggnog with bourbon, and she just parties her ass off when she comes over.
Right.
It's really funny to watch.
What was her impression of you when you wanted to get in the music industry?
She's very, you know how mothers are. They're very supportive.
So she was encouraged.
Whereas your dad is like, what the hell are you doing with that guitar up there? She was like,
exactly.
Hey, if you want to play and sing,
Right.
She was very supportive. And,
awesome.
she'd have a glass of Chardonnay and an eggnog with bourbon and sometimes a beer sitting on her table there in the living room watching TV. And she would I'd say, Mom, are you done with your eggnog? No. And she would sit there and she would one at a time, they'd all go away. And she never got drunk or lit up, but she was a happy, fun kind of lady to hang out with. And I don't know, I'm just really lucky to still have her.
Exactly. Yeah, my mom was 93. And
there you go.
Yeah, my dad is 91, and he lives with me.
Really?
We took care of both of them. My wife's a nurse as well, so that helped a lot. But Mom passed away in the house. Yeah. Not
to sound gratuitous here in my compliment, but it speaks well of you to take care of your folks that way. A lot of times they get shipped off to places that really don't much give a damn, and
I know.
It speaks well of you, Ray, to watch out for your dad and your mom that way.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I remember Joe. He always, he would tell me, he said, Ray, I got to leave. I got to take my mom to the hairdresser. I thought that was so cool.
Well, and it was interesting. I thought it was very appropriate that his mom would pass away just before he did, because it was just sort of the order in which things supposedly should happen, and I was I was sad for him, but I was also glad that he didn't, that she didn't outlive him. I think that would have been hard on her.
He was starting to feel good about the chemo too, and that's what shocked me. It just kind of out of nowhere just knocked him on his ass,
Yeah, well, a lot of people, everybody, they have no choice. They have to declare that they're going to beat. But it's not as easy as all that.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm naive. I honestly don't think anybody's ever going to die. I really buy into the Peter Pan principle. And and it's always a shock to me when someone passes away.
Me too.
And a very, emotional sort of connection. I'm just a sappy sort of guy that way. I'm very easy to cry and easy to laugh. And, it's some nights it's hard to sing some of these songs.
Right.
Like Ships of Heaven with BlackHawk, when I look out and I see a person in the audience who I happen to know that just lost their mom. It's, a member of Huey's family sitting in the audience, and I'm singing Green Grass and High Tides, and forget it. It's lights out. You can't just do that and not feel it.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I know what you mean. Hey, Henry, is there anything else you'd like to promote?
No, Jesus God Almighty. We're way off the track here, but it was great chatting with you, Ray.
Yeah, me too, man. You got the double live album. It's out for everybody to buy. It's fantastic. The 2 CDs, you name it, it's there.
That's a great record, and I'm real happy we could document this particular band and those particular impressions of those guys' music. We tried to be very respectful, and I thought the guys that play in the band now were just hugely respectful, and I couldn't be prouder of them individually and collectively.
Well, the Outlaws, BlackHawk, Henry Paul Band, they're all going strong. I don't know how you do it.
And we're all going to be in Clearwater on the 16th and Orlando on the 17th. So please,
awesome,
come over and hang with the local mutts.
The local mutts, exactly. Henry, thank you so much again, man, for being on the show and for all the great music you've given us through the years and into the future. Really
you bet. It was great chatting with you, and you have a great Christmas coming up.
You too, man. Take care.
See you, buddy.
All right. Bye. Purchase the Outlaws double live album, Legacy Live, at Amazon.com. For additional information, you can visit www.outlawmusic.com. The Outlaws are on Facebook, www.facebook.com/outlawsmusic, www.twitter.com/outlawsmusic. And also visit BlackHawk. Their website is www.blackhawklive.com. Very special thanks to Chipster PR and Cole Bernsteel for arranging this interview, and to Doug and Don Newsom with BBS Radio for making it all happen every show. Join me bi-weekly Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on The Ray Shasho Show. If you have comments or suggestions or would like to be a guest on The Ray Shasho Show, call 941-877-1552 or email us at ray@publicityworksagency.com. And don't forget to purchase my book entitled Tragedies, this true story of an eclectic American family and their wacky family business, or the second edition entitled Wacky Shenanigans on F Street, proud to be politically incorrect in Washington, D.C., available now at Amazon.com. It'll make a great stocking stuffer, and believe me, you'll live it. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to The Ray Shasho Show, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call 941-877-1552 or visit us at publicityworksagency.com, specializing in author and music artist publicity plans. We shine when we make you shine. Join Ray Shasho every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on PBS Radio, Station 1.